Well, hello everybody. I guess you just heard the bells there. Let me just focus this. That was the Church of Our Lady in Sainte Mère, Eglise, tolling the 4 o'clock bell. I have to wear a mask. We're in the La Manche department of France, and it's obligatory to wear a mask in public spaces. I hope you can hear me okay. I know a couple of people have responded already to say that they're hearing the sound loud and clear, which is great. If anybody else wants to just say hi by letting me know where you're viewing from, that would be good as well. For the next hour, we will be walking the streets of Sainte Mère, Eglise, seeing some of the sights, and I'll be telling you the story of what happened here, of course, on June 6, 1944. And then at the end of the tour, we'll be doing a debrief on Zoom. So I'll get back to the car and we'll do a debrief on Zoom. You're all welcome, very much welcome to join in the Zoom conversation, and that way you can actually ask questions live. Because these images and sound are coming to you using live streaming technology. So we get excellent HD quality video and professional sound. Hopefully there'll be no glitches. Bear with me a second and I'll just do a bit of housekeeping before we begin. I suppose there's a couple of people with us this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are, who have joined us before, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Patrick Hillier from welovenormandy.com. My company provides transport, accommodation and private tours to people visiting this beautiful region. And I've lived here for 19 years. I'm a D-Day guide, a member of the Normandy Battlefield Tour Guides Association. And in a normal year, I take around 300 to 400 people on private guided tours of the D-Day sites. This year, however, since March of last year, so 12 months now, we've had pretty much no international visitors. And so I've launched this series of virtual webinar tours and virtual on-location tours, this being one of them. Now, that's for people who can't come to Normandy in person. Now, if you're tuning into this, then I guess the instructions worked okay. If you've registered as a member on the We Love Normandy site, which I guess you have, then you can use the chat facility at the chat button to ask me questions. You can even chat to other participants in the tour if you have something in common, because you have a relative who was in Normandy during the Second World War, or for whatever reason, you can chat to each other. If you want to ask me a question, just press the chat button and select Patrick Hillier, my name, from the top of the list. And you can view the video that you're seeing now in full screen mode by tapping on the icon in the lower right hand corner of the video panel. And you can, if you wish, pause the show if you want to. Bear with me a second, we have some young motorcyclists coming through the town. You can pause the video for whatever reason, and even rewind if you like, by using the slider at the bottom of the video panel. If you do that, to get back to the live video, you have to just press the live button on the top left-hand side of the video panel. You should see that there. You can turn the sound on and off, of course. I hope you have the sound on. Again, on the with the icon on the lower left-hand corner of the video panel. And you can type a comment using chat, we've covered that. And the archive photographs that I'll be referring to and the military maps that I'll be referring to are in the gallery below the video panel. Again, these aren't visible when you're in full screen mode. Now, a virtual tour is no substitute for the real thing. Let me turn around so you can see the church. A virtual tour is no substitute for the real thing, but there are one or two advantages. Today you get to see the Normandy in the best possible way, i.e. no crowds and great weather for the time being. Right? We're keeping our fingers crossed that this beautiful blue sky is going to last. We'll begin with a stroll around the town and a chat about the background to the D-Day landings on June 6, 1944, the places, the actions, that took place here by the Allied forces on D-Day. But we're here especially to talk about the town of Sainte Mère Eglise, where we are right now. We'll discover the monuments and the tributes dedicated to the US Airborne forces who landed here a little after 1 a.m. on D-Day. And we'll learn about the role of the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, part of the US 82nd Airborne. You can probably tell this mask is giving me a hell of a time, but I'll persevere. I know the people on the TV have to do it, so I'll have to learn how to do it. So yeah, and we'll find out about John Steele. You can probably see his parachute canopy behind me on the bell tower of the church. Private John Steele, famously portrayed in the American movie The Longest Day by the Hollywood comedy actor Red Buttons. But we'll also talk about the real events that took place in this small but crucial crossroads town on June 6, 1944. So without further ado, we'll start to do the walk of the town. I'll tell you something about the background of D-Day while we're doing that and point out the things that are interesting en route. So without further ado, I'll flick to the main camera. And we will start the tour. So here we are on the main town square, the main market square. We'll be going into the church later. So where did the Allied invasion of Normandy take place? Or I should say the Allied invasion of France take place. Where are the Normandy landing sites? Well, there were several options for the location of Operation Overlord, including launching an invasion across the North Sea from Scotland to Norway, or indeed a Mediterranean invasion on the south coast of France. But a crossing of the English Channel was the only option due to the proximity of the only European country still resisting Nazi expansion. That's Great Britain, of course. Have a look at the map called Why Normandy in the gallery. And have a look at that map. The obvious choice for an invasion was to sail across the Strait of Dover to the Pas de Calais, which is a distance of only 20 miles at its narrowest point. But this being the obvious choice, the German defences in this region have been made too strong, and they were protected by the bulk of Hitler's armoured panzer divisions. And back in 1942, a raid on the port of Dieppe had failed terribly, with terrible consequences for the Canadian troops who carried out the assault. So the Allies this time knew that a beach operation, an assault of a sandy beach, was the only option. We're just getting to the corner of the street where, although we've got scaffolding at the moment on this building, if you have a look in the gallery at the photographs of the troops arriving, you'll see one photograph of a Red Cross ambulance, parked right outside the front of that beautiful arched carriage doorway. So we'll carry on. So in terms of an invasion site, the north coast of Brittany had suitable landing beaches, but that was considered too far from the airfields of southern England and beyond the range of Allied fighter planes. This poor kid getting a scolding off his grandpa. Now this left one option for the Allies, the Bay of the River Seine in Lower Normandy, and a 50-mile stretch of beaches, cliffs and estuaries between the seaport of Caen and the Cherbourg Peninsula where we are today. It's a distance of around 100 miles from England's southern coast. Now, I'm just taking a bit of a detour off the main street to show you a very interesting and often overlooked little monument commemoration to some of the troops, some of the US troops that died on D-Day. Worth the detour. Very few people come down here. Now, in terms of the location of the invasion, the Allies had to keep that a secret from the enemy. And moreover, they needed to convince the Germans that the invasion would be staged elsewhere. So, you may have heard of this, but an elaborate deception plan was put in place, codenamed Operation Fortitude, which included many cunning counterintelligence ploys to deceive the Germans, including a phantom army, the first US Army group. That was created in the southeast of England, complete with, as you can see on the photographs there, inflatable vehicles and tanks, fake radio transmissions, and even a fake commander in the guise of General George Patton, who later, of course, commanded the real US Third Army in Normandy. So have a look at those photographs. As I say, you have to come out of full screen mode to see the photographs in the gallery, and then you can go right back to full screen mode afterwards if you wish. So we're just coming up to the first of several monuments that we'll see today, this one possibly the smallest. And here it is, this quiet little street on the outskirts of the village, commemorating 4 soldiers of Charlie Company of the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, who lost their lives here in a mortar attack during the 2 days of counterattacks from the Germans after the invasion. You can see there, let me just get a bit of a close-up so you can see the names of the soldiers. I'll just swing around here. And the flags and ribbons that you see on the monument there are put there every year, certainly on the 6th of June. These must have been replenished since then because they're in such good condition, and that's done by the charming elderly couple who live in the house here. An example of how local people in Sainte Mère Eglise still recognise the sacrifice that the Allied troops made for the liberation of France back in June 1944. Anyway, so I just wanted to show you that small example of an often overlooked monument before we go and have a look at the bigger ones. Okay, I'll flip back to the main camera. We're here now walking back towards the church. You can see the parachute canopy just about maybe in the distance there on the roof of the church. I checked the weather forecast yesterday and it said rain would start at 4 p.m. So far we're on borrowed time, but very lucky. The weather here in Normandy can be very variable, as I'm sure you'll know if you visited. But today it looks like the weather gods are smiling on us. Yeah, now I was talking about Operation Fortitude, the deception operation. The ingenious officer behind that plan, that operation, was Major General Leslie McNair, whose grave is at the American Cemetery, and we can see that on one of my webinar tours, Omaha Beach to the American Cemetery. I'll be doing continuing to do my webinar tours, certainly throughout March, on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Paris time. Now, the beachhead here in Normandy, in terms of the enemy, was defended by 84 Corps of the German 7th Army. It was defended by 5 German infantry divisions, supported by 3 of the panzer divisions, the armoured divisions. In all, it was a force of around 100,000 enemy soldiers. But due to the confusing chain of command within the German army, the panzers, the tanks, did not engage American troops on D-Day. In fact, few of the German senior commanders were even present on the night of the 5th, 6th of June 1944. Photographs of some of those senior German commanders are in the gallery. Have a look at them. Hitler, whose photograph I haven't published, was celebrating the wedding of Eva Braun's sister at the Eagle's Nest in Bavaria. Rommel was in Germany as well, presenting his wife Lucia with a pair of shoes for her birthday. General Dolman, whose photograph is there, I believe, he was the commander of the 7th Army, and he was 100 miles away in Rennes, along with most of his divisional and regimental commanders, taking part in war games. And the only panzer commander whose tanks were within striking distance. Oh, let me just pause here for a second. You can see there again, look at one of the archive photographs of the GIs having a drink. I think I've put on the photograph having a drink of hard cider. I think it could be Calvados, could be something harder, Calvados brandy. And they are there just to the side of the letterbox, the mailbox, which you can see has been replaced with a modern one, but that's where that photograph was taken. So yeah, I was saying about General Fürstinger, whose tanks were within striking distance of the beachhead, but he was in Paris with his mistress. There's a commander called Fallet, General Fallet, who was the commander of the 91st Luftlandwehr Division. He was coming back from the war games in Brittany, and he was shot dead by a US paratrooper as he arrived at his HQ in the Chateau de Bernaville. And he was the first senior German officer to be killed on D-Day. In fact, only General Marx, swing round here, only poor old General Marx was actually at his HQ in Saint-Lô on the night of 5th, 6th June 1944. He was the commander of 84 Corps commander, and he was an archetype German general with a war sort of battle-scarred face and only one leg and the little glasses. But he had a bad time. Unfortunately, he was celebrating his birthday on the 6th of June. And sadly for him, he died. He didn't see another one, but because he died a few weeks later. Anyway, Hitler had decreed that only he could authorize the movements of the panzer divisions, and no one dared wake him on the morning of June 6th. So 21st Panzer, Fürstenger's panzer group, was very slow to react and did not engage with the enemy, and in Rommel's words, throw the enemy back into the sea. Luckily for the American, British and Canadian troops. Anyway, we arrive at our first main monument, major monument. Just on the town square. It's the Airborne Monument. This one commemorates all of the airborne units involved in Operation Overlord. You can see the AA of the American Airborne, the American 82nd Airborne, in whose sector we are today, and the Screaming Eagle of the 101st American Airborne Division. Also the 3rd Airborne Division involved on D-Day, the British 6th Airborne. You can see the Pegasus insignia there, the Pegasus the horse. The Canadian 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion, and the Free French Paratroopers. Also on the monument, whose motto is "In remembrance of the airborne spirit," are noted the number of killed and wounded airborne soldiers. As you can see, killed from the 3 major divisions, something like 2,800 troops. Okay. And next to the Airborne Monument, we come to the Signal Monument. By the way, again, looking at the original photographs that we have, let me see if I can get the angle of this right. In the gallery, walking down this street are the troops marching in a file down the street. That's right on this street here. And just in front of just to the west of the church, on the main market square, you can see there's no market today, but there's a guy selling pizzas, is the Signal Monument. Now, this is one of 10 monuments, or 10 of the original monuments erected during the late 1940s and into the 1950s. There's one of these for each of the main D-Day sites. You'll see one on Omaha Beach, there's one on Utah Beach, etc. And the inscription reads, on the 6th of June 1944, the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions liberated this town. Okay. We'll make our way down towards the town hall before we come back up to look inside the church. Ladies kindly letting me cross. This structure here, visible on some of the photographs of Sainte Mère Eglise during the war. As we go down towards the town hall, I'll just check to see if anyone's contacting me with questions. None so far. I guess everything's going well. And if I stand here, hopefully without getting run over, you can see that damage to the town was limited, and as you can tell from the walk that we've just done, not much has changed here since 1944. But enemy artillery did destroy several properties, like this one on the corner of Rue Division Leclerc. You can see the shell-damaged house in the gallery. Have a look at that. That's sort of a before and after shot. Over 2 days of counterattacks from the enemy, the 505th suffered around 500 casualties. And some of the properties in the town were damaged, like this one that you see, with the sort of pale cream coloured wall opposite the shop on the corner, where on the archive photographs you can see the gentleman smoking his pipe on the corner there. So from here we'll go to the town hall. Thank you very much for understanding about the time change on this today's tour. I think I mentioned in the email, at the moment the whole of France is on a 6 p.m. curfew. And so we need to get wrapped up by about 5:30 so I can get home. So I can get home for my supper before the curfew kicks in. It's quite bizarre. We understand exactly why it's happening, and I don't want to make light of it, but it must be the first time we've had a curfew here in France, in Normandy here, certainly since 1944. but we all have to abide by the rules. So yeah, we have to be away by about 6:30 French time. Okay, we're nearing the town hall. If any of you saw my webinar tour a few days ago, the US troops on D-Day, some of the footage might be familiar to you. This of course is live, and this is a beautiful neoclassical building, undamaged during the war. It's the Hôtel de Ville, the Sainte Mère Eglise town hall. And the first thing you notice right in front of the town hall is this thing. This is the famous way marker number 0 on the Freedom Road. The La Voie de la Liberté, the Liberty Way or the Freedom Road, starts here and follows the route of General Patton's Third Army all the way to Bastogne in the Ardennes, about 500 miles away to the northeast in Belgium. Every kilometre there's one of these things along the road. If you've come to Normandy, you'll definitely have seen these at the side of the road. And some people call them Daleks, like on Doctor Who. Now, as well as claiming to be the town where the Freedom Road begins, Sainte Mère Eglise also claims to be the first town to be liberated on the Western Front, as you can see from this little plaque here. First town to be liberated on the Western Front. Now that plaque there, conveniently, I know you're probably looking at it now in mirror image, but conveniently ignores the fact that southern Italy and Sicily had been invaded by the Allied forces in 1943, and of course the little town of Bénouville next to Pegasus Bridge on the left flank of the D-Day invasion was liberated just after midnight by the British 6th Airborne Division. So, but it is certainly the first town in the American sector to be liberated on D-Day. Okay. If we go up into the front courtyard of the town hall and into the front garden, there's a small monument dedicated to the division that played such a key role in the liberation of the town. Of course, we're talking about the 82nd Airborne Division. Here is the monument. Dedicated to General Ridgway and General Gavin. Matthew Ridgway, known as Matt to his colleagues, and so I'm told his other nickname was Old Iron Tits, so excuse me, but that's what it says in the books. And General Gavin, James Gavin, who was the commander of the 505th and commanded the task force, the overall task force, on the night of 5th, 6th of June. As you can see, in grateful tribute to Ridgway and Gavin, and to all the gallant liberators of our town. Okay, from here, from the town hall, we will walk back up towards the church, and if it's still open, we'll go inside and see some of the things inside the church. I'll just check to see if we have any questions. So we were talking about the German command structure. The Allied High Command had been formed by a joint American-British organisation called SHAEF, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, headed by General Eisenhower with Air Chief Marshal Tedder as his deputy, General Bedell Smith as his Chief of Staff. If you have a look at the photograph on the gallery, that's a classic photograph of SHAEF. You'll see the other members. Field Marshal Montgomery, in charge of the land forces. Omar Bradley, the American First Army commander. Air Marshal Sir Trafford Lee Mallory, who was in charge of the air forces, and Admiral Sir Bertram Ramsay, who was in charge of the Navy. And together they planned and executed the largest air and seaborne invasion in history. Operation Overlord involved 7,000 seagoing vessels carrying 133,000 troops to the beach, or beaches. Thousands of transport planes, and of course that's what we're here to talk about today, the airborne operations. Thousands of transport planes and gliders dropped over 23,000 airborne troops behind enemy lines. And altogether 156,000 service personnel were put on French soil on the 6th of June 44. Have a look at the picture called D-Day in Numbers in the gallery. It's a good infographic with the basic information. There's 5 beaches, each with its own code name. Sword and Gold, where the British forces landed. Juno, where the Canadians landed. See, even the bars and the shops here dedicated to the airborne forces. Utah Beach, of course, where the US 7 Corps landed. It's just 10 miles away from here. And Omaha Beach, bloody Omaha, where 2 divisions, the 1st and the 29th, landed. Memorabilia shops and army surplus shops. I'll give you guys a wave. So they came by air and sea. By the way, have a look at the gallery, you'll see this. See if I can get the angle right. I think just about here you see the troops cautiously making their way up this street, Rue General Koenig, towards the church, possibly coming under fire from snipers in these buildings on the left, or even in the church. So they came by air and sea. The Navy task forces that brought the infantry came from the south coast of England and as far away as Wales and East Anglia, and they converged at a point south of the Isle of Wight, codenamed Piccadilly Circus. If you're from the United States, I suppose Piccadilly Circus is the equivalent in the States would be Times Square or something like that. It's a very busy thoroughfare in London. And from there they came across the English Channel through carefully swept channels through the minefields. Again, have a look at the map of those invasion routes in the gallery. And from this angle, here we are at the church. We're at the back of the church, the north side of the church. You'll see another photograph again of the troops cautiously making their way around this side of the church. Nothing has changed at all. There was a building between the church and where you see that little black car. That has gone. But otherwise, the building is exactly the same as it was. I'll tell you a bit about the history of the church shortly. Now, the US airborne troops came by C-47 transport planes. They were dropped by parachute or by glider. Some of them even came by sea. The parachute regiments were flown in over the Cherbourg Peninsula from west to east, whereas the glider-borne troops came across the sea from east to west and over Utah Beach. The 101st Airborne drop was codenamed Mission Albany. That was preceded by the 82nd Airborne's drop, which was codenamed Mission Boston, hence the temporary password that I put on the video page, Boston. The scouts, or the pathfinders, of the 82nd were dropped ahead of the main battalions, and they arrived just after 1 AM, right here, some of them right here in the town. Now, the disembarkation of the infantry troops on the beaches was preceded by the way, if you're wondering what that strange structure is up ahead, that's the aircraft hangar of the Airborne Museum, which is purpose-built to house a C-47 transport plane, while we're on the subject of the C-47 transport planes. It's currently being restored or rebuilt or something, taking advantage of the closure, the nationwide closure of museums due to the pandemic, to renovate the museum. So that's going to be something very interesting to look at when they reopen, maybe early next year. I'll have to find out when they're going to reopen. So yeah, the troops arrived following a huge aerial and naval bombardment of the beachhead, which was intended to soften up the defences, the enemy defences. The French resistance played their role too in destroying enemy communications and transport systems, especially disrupting the rail network prior to the invasion. So the first waves of infantry troops to land on French soil would do so, let me swing around here, would do so to limited enemy resistance. Well, that was the plan. And in fact, it was the case, for example, for the 4th Infantry Division landing on Utah Beach. But for the airborne troops, it was a very different situation, as indeed it was for the troops on Omaha Beach. But the airborne troops were brought in and dropped in here in the black of night, 6 hours prior to H hour, when the infantry arrived on the beaches. And they were dropped behind enemy lines. The troops of the 505th, they were dropped into 3 drop zones, T, O, and N. You can see those on the map in the gallery. And this is drop zone O. This is where we are, right in the middle of, or just slightly to the east of drop zone O. And if you have a look on the map, you can probably barely make out drop zone O, because it's completely filled with those light blue parachute canopies, which indicate a stick of soldiers, about 18 men, from the 505th Regiment. So the 505th pretty much hit their mark. But if you look at the other ones, T and N, you can see that the paratroopers of those regiments, the 507th and the 508th, were scattered over a huge area. Now we're just about to go into the church, but before we do, I'll just tell you what happened to the troops arriving and why they were scattered so badly. Due to the bad weather conditions, enemy anti-aircraft fire, and the inexperience of some of the pilots, the C-47 transport planes missed most of their drop zones. Some pilots flew too high to get above the flak, others flew too low to get under the clouds, and almost all of them flew too fast. Those paratroopers who survived the jump were dispersed over hundreds of square miles and spent the night of 5th and 6th June basically trying to rejoin their units, find their rendezvous points. The 101st were given the objectives of assisting the beach landings at Utah Beach, just about 10 miles from here, and supporting the link-up of the 2 US corps, the 7 Corps and 5 Corps. The 82nd here were to hold or destroy river bridges, to cut off the peninsula, to stop any German counterattacks coming from the south, and take this most important crossroads town of Sainte, Mère, Eglise. So, let's go inside the church. My Luckily the door is still open. I'll stand here a second. So the church itself was in the middle of the firefight. I'll talk about the story of what happened on the night of D-Day when we finished in here. But it did suffer some damage, especially to the ancient windows. The church you see today is 14th century, and the origins of the building go back to the 12th century. And some of the glass windows that were damaged during the invasion, two of them were replaced with stained glass windows that commemorate the events of the 6th of June. And we're going to go inside and see those. Okay. Obviously, I'll have to lower my voice now and respect anybody who's praying in here, but I think at the moment there's certainly no service taking place. As you can probably tell, the church is still very much an active place of worship, and the Roman Catholic Mass is celebrated here regularly. The church, as I say, bore the brunt of the initial exchange of fire between the German occupiers and the US paratroopers. Two of the windows were destroyed, replaced with stained glass that commemorates the events. And the first one we'll see is this one, produced to mark the 25th anniversary of D-Day. This window has the insignia of the units involved in the town's liberation. You can see right at the top there the Airborne Wings and Shoot, the AA, which we've seen a couple of times already this evening, of the All-American Division, the 82nd Airborne, the insignia of the 505th Regiment, which was the regiment targeted to land in Drop Zone O here, just outside Sainte Mère Eglise. You can see at the bottom the glider insignia and the Free French Cross of Lorraine to the bottom left. There's a Dove of Peace. There's an olive branch. Actually, what I'll do is I'll get as close as I can so you can see some of the detail in the window itself. You can see these little pieces that from a distance just look like a pattern, but actually they're pictures of houses and even troops. You can see a trooper there, see an American soldier to the bottom right of that blue ship insignia there. Somewhere up there, as I say, there is an olive branch. There we go. And the Lion of Normandy. And over to the left there is the coat of arms of the town of Sainte Mère Eglise, to which, to show their respect and appreciation for the liberation, they added two parachute canopies. You can see the coat of arms there with the lion and the two parachute canopies. Hope they're coming through. The main image is of Saint Michael, archangel and warrior in the battle of good versus evil, typically. He's often depicted as he is here, with his sword raised, slaying Satan in the form of a dragon. Show you the dragon there, the blue dragon of Satan coming from underneath St. Michael's cloak. Now, it cannot be overlooked that this religious theme is truly a symbol of the triumph of the free world over Nazi domination. The inscription at the bottom, by the way, reads, "Ils sont revenus," they have come back. This one is above the west door of the church. And this one was the first one to be produced just after the war, 1949, I believe. Now, I've included a photograph of this one because it's not easy to get a close-up with the video camera. The theme is the Virgin Mary and the baby Jesus, but surrounded by paratroopers. I hope you can make that out, with the town itself depicted in the lower part of the window. It was designed by Paul Renaud, who was the son of the Mère of Sainte Mère Eglise. He was a boy of only 14 years old at the time of the liberation and made sketches, obviously a talented young artist. And after the war, his sketches were used to design this stained glass window. If you can have a look, I don't know if you can make it out from the video images, but maybe on the photograph in the gallery, you can see that behind the church and the buildings, you can see the flames of a house on fire. And during the night of the 5th and 6th June, a flare had ignited, let me swing this round now, a flare had ignited the barn and spread to the house of Madame Pommier, property which is now where the Airborne Museum is located. And we'll find out about this part of the story shortly. Okay, we'll make our way out of the church. As you can see, the blue skies seem to have left us, and the grey clouds of Normandy have replaced them. But we still have, I think we're going to get enough time before the rain starts. By the way, I should have mentioned the inscription on the second of the two stained glass windows, if you're still looking at that on the gallery photograph, reads, "This window was produced in collaboration with Paul Renaud to the memory of those who by their courage and their sacrifice liberated Sainte Mère Eglise." Now, you know, I bring hundreds of visitors to the Normandy beaches every year, and I always try to show them, take them into the church and show them those two windows and other signs of gratitude and friendship shown by the local population to the Allied forces. The troops and the forces involved on D-Day are truly respected here in Normandy. But the towns and the villages here were liberated at enormous cost in terms of not only military but also civilian lives, which makes the message of thanks on that stained glass window there, to me at least, even more poignant. Okay. So, we'll go to the story of the initial attack of the town. As we look back at the west door of the church here, you can see on the gallery photographs, you should be able to find a photograph taken from this angle. Let me come back a little bit so we get the trees on there as well. There you go. It's taken from pretty much this angle. You can see the photo there of a brave paratrooper making a dash across the open ground to the cover of the building. Okay, we're going to make our way over to the town pump. Do send me any messages or questions that you need answering. I've heard nothing from you since Susan and Anne-Marie very kindly sent me a message to say that the sound is okay. If you do want to ask a question, just send me a chat. But as I say, we'll be starting the debrief just after the tour in about 10 minutes' time. And you can chat to me then, live. So you may be able to see coming up here the town pump, and I'll tell you the story about what happened here at this position here. Getting a bit of wind now. I hope the wind noise isn't too bad. Might get a bit of camera shake, however. I'll try and hunker down next to the pump here. There we go. Can you still see the church? Just about see the parachute there. Okay. So, the first airborne troops who dropped into the town must have been greeted by a bizarre sight. The fire in Madame Pommier's house had brought out the Germans and the townsfolk, because the curfew had been lifted, and they'd formed a bucket line from this pump to the house which is in front of me to try to put out the flames. The troopers landed to the noise of the transport planes, the gunfire, the roaring of the flames, and the tolling of the church bell up there in the tower. At least one man landed in the fire, and others were caught in the branches of trees. 3 men fell to the rear of the church. Sergeant John P. Ray, you can see their photographs in the gallery. Sergeant John P. Ray landed on the ground, and Privates John Steele and Ken Russell. Now, as the Normandy weather is coming in a little here, what I'll do is I'll just get into the lee of the church, where I think we might get some cover from the rain. There we go. Goodness me. So, where's my hair and makeup artist? You can see how quickly the weather in Normandy does change from one minute to the next, but we're just out of the wind here. Hopefully it's just a passing shower. So yeah, we were there in the action of the night of D-Day just after 1 o'clock. John Ray, John Steele and Ken Russell landed on or near the church. John Ray landed on the ground just around the corner. Let me show you there. Just around the corner there at the back of the church, and John Steele and Ken Russell were stuck on the chute lines hanging from the church bell tower. A German sentry spotted John Ray and shot him with his rifle. He then turned his rifle up towards the boys on the roof, but before he could pull the trigger, John Ray managed to draw his sidearm and shoot the German sentry dead. Now, Sergeant John Ray sadly died of his wounds a week later, a couple of months before his 22nd birthday. The other soldiers, Private Russell, who was on the lower of the 2 roofs, we'll try and get a shot of that when this rain passes over. He was a little bit lower down than John Steele, managed to cut his chute lines and drop to the ground and make his way. John Steele was caught on the top of the bell tower. He'd been injured in the foot, and the Germans inside the tower took him prisoner. However, in spite of his injuries, John Steele managed to escape a few days later and rejoin his unit and fight with the 82nd throughout the rest of the war. He became a regular visitor to Sainte, Mère, Eglise. You can see a photograph there of him in 1964. And he was immortalised by the Hollywood actor Red Buttons in the movie The Longest Day, and by that mannequin that still hangs on the church tower, which we'll get a look at as we dash across the square to the car. Sadly, John Steele died of a long illness in 1969, and he never lived to see the stained glass window dedicated to his unit. So before we wrap up, there's just one more thing I'd like to show you. It's a bit wet. The rain is coming down quite a lot. I'm afraid that the extra bonus on the end was going to be to look at the fence with the bullet holes still in the fence from the firefight that took place on the 6th of June. I'm reluctant to go across the square because it's blowing a gale now and pouring with rain. So we might have to leave that one for a future tour. If at the end of the Zoom call we have time, maybe we could go back to that. We'll see. So yeah, just to wrap up then before the Zoom call, the 23,000 airborne troops were successfully deployed into enemy territory. Why don't I turn the thing around so you can see how awful the weather is here. 23,000 airborne troops arrived, with the losses on D-Day running to well over 1,000 dead. But the US airborne troops did make contact with the 4th Infantry Division on D-Day, and they linked up with Utah Beach and Omaha Beach. They linked up Utah Beach and Omaha Beach well within a week. 7 Corps' ultimate objective of taking the deep water port of Cherbourg was achieved in 3 weeks, and the airborne units then played a crucial role in the fight all the way to Germany. So I think at that stage we will get into the car and we'll do the wrap up in there. Well, thank you for bearing with me. It's been one of those days. You can never guarantee good weather in Normandy, but you often get a brief sunny and calm period, which we did for the first 45-50 minutes of the program. Let me just check that I haven't got any messages from my patient viewers. All safe and sound and dry in your houses, I hope, enjoying a hot beverage or maybe even a cold one, which I'm looking forward to when I get home. Okay, so let me just check to see if anybody has sent in any final questions. If my cell phone works in the rain or with the water. Doesn't look like it. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the tour, and I hope I've been able to show you what a struggle it was for the paratroopers on D-Day. It was also a struggle for the infantry soldiers, especially for those landing on Omaha Beach, and some of the units there faced the toughest challenge, and I'll be bringing you their story direct live from Omaha Beach on Saturday the 13th of March at 4 p.m. Paris time. It's a free or contribution-based tour, so hurry up because the tickets are going fast, and I hope you can join us for that one. Now, you can see all of our forthcoming webinars and on-location virtual tours on the website welovenormandy.com and on the eventbrite.com website as well. Now, in a few minutes I'll be commencing the debrief on Zoom, and you should have received the instructions on how to join. If not, I'll send you the link to the Zoom chat, to the Zoom meeting on the chat facility, so just let me know if you haven't got those. And for those of you who can't make the debrief, I can see a couple of people have had to leave. Thank you so much for participating, and I hope you can tune in again soon. And for the others, I'll see you in a few minutes on Zoom. See you shortly. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of minutes. Bye-bye.